The airport was full of noise, announcements, footsteps, rolling bags, and excited voices. Among the crowd was a little girl named Amara, holding her father's hand tightly. Amara was just 8 years old. Her eyes were wide with wonder. This was her first flight ever. She wore her favorite yellow jacket, and in her tiny backpack was a coloring book, a small stuffed bunny, and her dream of flying high above the clouds. Her father, Mr. Jordan, walked calmly beside her. He was a tall man, quiet and serious. His eyes were kind, but strong. "Are you ready?" he asked. Amara nodded quickly. "I can't wait to see the clouds from the window." Mr. Jordan smiled. "You'll love it." They reached the gate. The airline crew smiled and scanned their tickets. Everything seemed normal. But as Amara stepped forward, a flight attendant looked at her, then at Mr. Jordan, and something in her smile faded. She didn't say anything. Not yet. On board the plane, Amara looked for her seat. It was near the window, row 14A. She sat down and looked outside, grinning. Mr. Jordan sat beside her. She started coloring quietly while passengers continued boarding. Suddenly, a white woman wearing sunglasses and expensive clothes, stopped near them. She was holding a cup of coffee. She glanced at Amara, then said loudly, "Excuse me, I believe there's a mistake. I was supposed to have this row." The flight attendant came over quickly. "Let me check." Mr. Jordan calmly showed their boarding passes. "We're in the right seats." The woman frowned. "I just don't feel comfortable here." The flight attendant didn't ask more. She leaned closer to Mr. Jordan and whispered something. He didn't move. His face stayed calm. Amara looked up, confused. "Daddy, what's wrong?" "Nothing, sweetheart. Keep coloring." A few minutes later, the same flight attendant returned. This time, her tone was different, sharper. "I'm sorry," she said to Mr. Jordan. "Would you mind switching seats, just for comfort? Airline policy." Mr. Jordan looked at her, slowly, carefully. "No, my daughter has a window seat. She's been looking forward to it." The woman behind them sighed loudly. Unbelievable. The flight attendant's smile faded completely now. "Well," she said, "we're trying to keep everyone comfortable." But it was clear, only one passenger's comfort seemed to matter. Amara didn't understand. She just knew something felt strange now. The smiles were gone. The air felt heavy. The flight attendant walked away. A few rows ahead, another crew member whispered something to her. They both looked back at Amara and her father. Amara touched her father's arm. "Did I do something wrong?" Mr. Jordan looked at her. His eyes were soft, but his jaw was tight. "No, baby," he said quietly. "You didn't do anything wrong." The plane began to move. Passengers buckled their seatbelts. Amara looked out the window with wonder, but her smile had faded. The woman behind them muttered something under her breath. The flight attendant passed by again and gave Mr. Jordan a cold look, as if he had caused trouble. And Mr. Jordan, he didn't speak. He didn't argue. He didn't make a scene. But something in his eyes had changed. It was the look of a father holding in pain. The look of a man who had seen this before, too many times. He looked at his daughter. Her small hands, her confused face, her innocence. He took a deep breath and whispered something to himself. Not now. Not here. But soon. The plane took off into the sky. High above the clouds, Amara sat quietly. She no longer talked about the window view. She no longer smiled. Mr. Jordan reached into his pocket and took out his phone. He opened a blank note. He began typing slowly, calmly, but with purpose. Words that would later shake the world. But for now, he looked out the window beside his daughter. And he waited. The plane was quiet now. People were settling into their seats, fastening belts, pulling down trays, and closing their eyes. But Amara sat still. Her small fingers held her stuffed bunny tightly. Her eyes looked outside the window, But her heart was no longer flying. It was sinking. She didn't understand why the flight felt so different now. Why the nice flight attendant had turned cold. Why the woman behind them kept sighing loudly. Why her father hadn't smiled in a while. And then, it got worse. The same flight attendant returned. She stood by their row, forcing a tight smile. "Sir," she said to Mr. Jordan, "I'm going to have to ask you to move. There's been a seat change." Mr. Jordan looked up, calm but firm. "We're fine here." The attendant's voice got sharper. "It's for safety and comfort. Please, sir, cooperate." People began turning their heads now, watching, whispering. The woman behind them folded her arms. Finally, Mr. Jordan looked at his daughter. "Sweetheart, grab your bag." "Why?" Amara asked, her voice small. "They want us to move." "But why?" she whispered. Mr. Jordan didn't answer. He couldn't. He took her hand, and they walked down the aisle together, past watching eyes, past quiet mouths, past silence that said everything. Their new seats were near the very back of the plane, right beside the bathroom. The air smelled strange. The seat was tight. The window was blocked. Amara looked up. "Can I still see the clouds?" Her father gave a sad smile. "Maybe, next time." In the front, the white woman now sat in their old seats. She smiled at the attendant, took off her sunglasses, and stretched her legs comfortably. No one said a word. No one stopped it. But one person had noticed. A young woman, maybe in her 20s, had been sitting across the aisle the whole time. She had watched everything. Her name was Zora, and she had started recording the moment she saw the unfair treatment. Her phone was low in her lap, but the video was clear. The looks, the tone, the silence, the moment they were moved. She looked back at Mr. Jordan and Amara now. Her heart was heavy. "This isn't right," she whispered to herself. Back at the rear seats, Amara leaned her head on her father's arm. "Do they not like us?" she asked softly. Her father didn't answer right away. He looked straight ahead, calm, strong, but inside, something burned. Then he said, "They don't know you. That's all." Amara blinked. "But I didn't do anything." "You don't have to," he said. "Sometimes people don't need a reason. They just see what they want." Amara nodded slowly, still confused. "But don't worry," he added. "This story isn't over." The rest of the flight passed slowly. People began to notice. A few whispered. A few looked away. The crew walked by Amara and her father without even offering snacks or drinks. It was like they didn't exist. But they existed. And now the truth did too, captured quietly in Zora's phone. When the plane finally landed, Amara stood up carefully. She looked back toward their old seats. The white woman was laughing now, chatting with the flight crew, as if nothing had happened. Mr. Jordan took Amara's bag and held her hand. As they walked past the crew, no one said goodbye. No smiles. No thanks. But Mr. Jordan looked directly at the flight attendant who had made them move. Not with hate, but with silence that said, "You thought this was the end, but it's just the beginning." Outside the airport, Zora found them. "Sir," she said to Mr. Jordan, nervous but determined, I recorded what happened, if you want it." Mr. Jordan looked at her, surprised, but thankful. He nodded once. "Send it to this number," he said, handing her a card. Then he looked down at Amara. "You okay?" She nodded, but her eyes were tired. He bent down and whispered, "You were brave. Now it's my turn." He opened the car door for his daughter, and as they drove off, the city lights reflected on the window beside her. She looked out. She couldn't see the clouds anymore. But somewhere inside her, something had changed. And her father. He was already writing his first words. Words that would wake up a sleeping world. The sun was setting as Mr. Jordan and Amara reached home. She went straight to her room, quiet and tired. She didn't ask for dinner. She didn't ask for cartoons. She just sat by the window, watching the sky slowly turn dark. Inside the living room, Mr. Jordan sat at the table, his hands folded, his face calm. But his mind was racing. He turned on his laptop. He opened the video Zora had sent him, the full recording from the plane. Everything was there. Every word, every look, every unfair moment. The camera had captured it all. Amara's innocence, the crew's coldness, the woman's entitled smirk. Mr. Jordan watched it once, then again. He didn't cry. He didn't shout. Instead, he opened a blank page and began to write. He wrote for hours, not just about the flight, but about being a father, about the pain of seeing his daughter hurt in silence, about staying calm when his heart was burning. His words were not angry. They were powerful. They were filled with love, truth, and quiet strength. And at the top of the letter, he wrote, "To the airline that taught my daughter a lesson I never wanted her to learn." The next morning, he posted the video and his letter on social media. He didn't tag the airline. He didn't use loud hashtags. He just spoke honestly. And the world listened. At first, a few people shared it. Then a few more. By the end of the day, it had 100,000 views. By the next morning, it had 1 million. People were angry. People were heartbroken. Parents cried. Teachers reposted. Celebrities commented. This is not just a story, someone wrote. This is every black parent's fear. Inside the airline office, chaos was rising. Managers called emergency meetings. Did this really happen? Is this real footage? Why didn't the crew report anything? They tried to stay quiet, tried to prepare a simple statement, but the pressure was growing. And the truth was louder than silence now. Meanwhile, Zara, the young woman who recorded the video, was being called a hero. News channels interviewed her. "I didn't know what to do in the moment," she said, "but I knew I couldn't stay silent." Reporters asked if she was afraid. She shook her head. "I was afraid Amara would think this was normal. That's what scared me." Back in her room, Amara sat with her stuffed bunny. Her school teacher had called. So had her best friend. "Everyone's talking about you," they said. But Amara didn't feel like a hero. "I just wanted to sit by the window," she whispered. That night, Mr. Jordan sat beside her bed. "Daddy," she asked, "why are people listening now?" He smiled gently. "Because sometimes, when the truth is quiet, people finally hear it." She thought for a moment. Did we do the right thing? Mr. Jordan looked her in the eyes. "We didn't do anything wrong, Amara. That's the point. And now, they know." Outside their house, news vans had started to arrive. People lit candles. Mothers and daughters came to stand outside in support. Some held signs that said, "Let black children dream in peace." But Mr. Jordan wasn't looking for attention. He was preparing something bigger. He had started collecting stories. Emails came in from across the country. Other black families. Other children. Other silent moments. One read, "My son was moved for the same reason last year. I didn't speak up, but now I will." Another said, "Thank you. My daughter saw your video. She said, maybe the world is starting to care." Mr. Jordan saved every message. He made a folder called Voices. The airline finally responded. A short statement. Cold words. No names. No apology. "We are looking into the incident," they said. People weren't happy. A famous actor reposted the video with one line. It had been 4 days since the flight, but the world hadn't forgotten. The video of little Amara being moved from her seat had gone viral. Her father's calm words had reached millions. And now, people were waiting. Waiting for the airline to do something real. Waiting for justice. Waiting for the man behind the letter, Mr. Jordan, to speak again. But Mr. Jordan wasn't just waiting. He was preparing. That morning, he sat in his study, Sunlight touched the desk where piles of letters lay. Emails from strangers, messages from teachers, calls from civil rights groups. But on the table was something even more important, a folder. The same folder he had pulled from the shelf the night before. Inside it was his past, and a secret no one knew yet. Inside the folder were certificates, newspaper clippings, old court documents. Because Mr. Jordan was not just a quiet father. He was once a civil rights lawyer, one of the best. A man who had won cases no one thought were possible. A man who had once stood in courtrooms and fought for people who couldn't speak. But after his wife died, he had left everything behind to raise Amara alone. Now, for the first time in years, he was ready to fight again. At school, Amara walked through the hall quietly. Kids whispered. Some waved. Others just stared. Her teacher knelt beside her. "You okay?" she asked. Amara nodded. "Just tired." The teacher smiled softly. "You're brave." Amara didn't feel brave. She felt confused. She just wanted to be a kid again, to fly without fear. But her name was now a symbol. Her face was now on news channels, and her story had reached every corner of the internet. Back at home, Mr. Jordan made a phone call. "Get the press ready," he said. "I'm filing a case." That evening, he stood on a small stage outside his house. Amara stood beside him, holding his hand. Reporters filled the street. Cameras flashed. Microphones pointed forward. Mr. Jordan spoke slowly, clearly, with no anger, just truth. "I never wanted attention. I wanted peace for my daughter. I stayed silent for years. But now, the silence has hurt my child. And I won't let that happen again." He paused, looked down at Amara. "We are filing a lawsuit against the airline for racial discrimination, emotional harm, and failure to protect a child passenger." The crowd gasped. Reporters scribbled notes. "This is not just about my daughter. This is about every child who's been told they don't belong." The airline tried to fight back. They released a longer statement. "We value all our customers. This was a misunderstanding." But people didn't believe it. Too many had seen the video. Too many had felt the pain. Too many had lived it themselves. And now, the world was watching. In court, the airline's lawyers tried to shift the blame. They said Mr. Jordan had overreacted. They said Amara was never in danger. They said the seat change was a simple policy. But Mr. Jordan stood up calmly, holding the folder. He placed it on the table. And inside, he showed every detail. Photos of Amara's empty seat, voice recordings from other witnesses, and Zora's video, the proof no one could ignore. Then, one by one, other passengers from the flight came forward. An older man said, "I saw it. I said nothing. I regret that." A woman said, "I teach children. What they did to that little girl broke me." Even one junior flight crew member, scared but honest, said in court, "We were told to keep the white passenger happy. I knew it wasn't right, but I didn't have the courage to stop it." The courtroom was silent after that. Mr. Jordan didn't smile. He just looked at Amara. She smiled at him, a little stronger now. Outside the courtroom, the news spread like fire. Father fights back after airline humiliates daughter. From silence to strength, the Amara Jordan story. But Mr. Jordan wasn't looking for headlines. He was looking for change. At bedtime, Amara asked, "Did we win, Daddy?" Mr. Jordan kissed her forehead. "We're not done yet," he said. "But now, they're listening." That night, as she fell asleep, Amara dreamed of clouds again. This time, she was flying, free, smiling, fearless. And this time, no one made her move. It had been a week since Mr. Jordan filed the case. The world was watching. News channels kept showing Amara's quiet face. Her photo sat beside words like justice, racism, and courage. But behind all the noise, the little girl was still just a child. She missed her normal life. At school, Amara walked the halls like a shadow. Some students came up to her. "You're famous now." Others just stared. Some parents whispered when they picked up their kids. She didn't want fame. She wanted her window seat back. She wanted to fly again without fear. Mr. Jordan saw the weight on her face. One evening, he brought her outside to the porch. The night was quiet. The stars were bright. "You're strong, Amara," he said. "I don't feel strong," she replied. "You don't have to feel it to be it," he said softly. She leaned against him. "Will they ever say sorry?" He looked up at the sky. Sometimes people say sorry with words. Sometimes they say it by changing. But behind closed doors, the airline wasn't changing. Their legal team worked day and night. They tried to delay the case. They offered money to make it go away. They asked Mr. Jordan to settle. "We can make this disappear," they said. But he looked at them and said just one word: no. He didn't want silence. He wanted truth. And the truth was that his daughter had been humiliated in front of strangers, simply for being who she was. In the courtroom, more people kept stepping forward. A mother from another flight spoke. "My daughter was treated badly too. We didn't record it, but I never forgot." A retired crew member testified. Yes, these things happen more than people think, especially when passengers are black. The judge listened. The jury listened. And most of all, the public listened. Back at home, Amara started drawing again. She made pictures of airplanes, but this time she drew herself with big wings. She called the drawing, "Next time, I fly myself." One day, a surprise arrived. A letter from a little white girl named Lily. It said, "Dear Amara, I saw what happened to you. I'm sorry. It wasn't fair. I want to sit with you on my next flight. Your friend, Lily." Amara smiled for the first time in days. Mr. Jordan read the letter and felt something inside him soften. Then came a moment no one expected. Zora, the young woman who recorded the original video, was invited to a live news interview. She was nervous, but when the camera started, her voice didn't shake. "I didn't do anything big," she said. "I just didn't look away." The host asked her, "Why do you think this video hit so hard?" Zora looked straight into the lens. Because it wasn't just about race. It was about a little girl who just wanted to fly. And the world saw what happens when silence is louder than justice. The clip of Zora went viral again. Millions watched it. And slowly, something started to change. Airline workers began speaking up. Passengers began sharing old stories. Social media wasn't just angry now. It was active. People started signing petitions. Protect children from discrimination. Airline reform now got over 2 million signatures in 3 days. The airline finally cracked. They released a real statement. This time, they named Amara. They admitted to mishandling the situation and failing to protect a minor. They apologized, publicly. But Mr. Jordan wasn't satisfied. He stood in front of reporters and said, "Apologies mean little without action. Change your training. Change your mindset. Don't fix this for my daughter. Fix it for the next one." That night, Amara asked her dad, "Did they really hear us this time?" Mr. Jordan looked at her gently. "Not just us, sweetheart. They heard you." She thought for a moment. "I didn't even speak on the plane." "You didn't need to," he said. "Your silence was loud. And now, it can't be silenced." Outside their home, candles still flickered. People still gathered quietly, holding signs that read, "Let her fly. Every seat is her seat." The courtroom was quiet. Mr. Jordan stood at the front. His voice was calm. His back was straight. But his heart was beating like a drum. This was the final hearing. The judge would soon make a decision. But something bigger was already happening, outside the courtroom, across the country, even in other parts of the world. People were watching. People were changing. The judge looked at the papers on her desk. She had watched the video. She had read the letters. She had seen the tears in Amara's eyes. She cleared her throat and said, "This case is not just about one flight. It is about how we see and treat children. It is about dignity. And today, we say clearly, every child deserves to fly without fear." She ruled in favor of Mr. Jordan and Amara. They had won. Reporters rushed outside. Headlines exploded online. Father wins justice after airline shames daughter. Court backs black child mistreated on flight. Little girl's silence led to big change. People cheered in the streets. Airline stocks dropped. A storm of emails and calls poured into the airline's office. And still, Mr. Jordan stayed calm. He wasn't angry. He wasn't loud. He was focused. He met with lawyers and leaders. He didn't just want justice for Amara. He wanted policy change. And within days, a national movement had begun. It was called "A Seat for Every Child." The message was simple. No matter the child's skin color, no matter where they sit, no matter who complains, every child deserves respect. Under pressure, the airline made a big announcement. They promised to add new anti-bias training for all flight staff, create a reporting system for passengers to report discrimination, start a family respect program across their flights, and most importantly, they offered Amara a public apology in person. But Mr. Jordan didn't want a photo op. He asked for something else, a fund in Amara's name to support children who face discrimination in travel, school, or public places. He called it the Amara Fund, so every child can fly freely. The airline agreed, and the moment was shared worldwide. At school, Amara became more than just a student. She became a symbol of strength. She stood in front of her class one day and read a short message she had written. "I didn't understand why they moved me. I thought maybe I did something wrong. But I didn't. And if something like that happens to you, it's not your fault. Speak up, or let someone help you speak. You matter." The room was silent. Then everyone clapped. Her teacher cried. Later that night, Amara asked her dad, "Can we fly again someday?" Mr. Jordan smiled. "Yes, and this time you'll sit by the window." She giggled. "And I won't move." "No," he said, "you'll fly proud." In the months that followed, the Amara Fund helped dozens of families. One girl who was bullied on a school bus. One boy who was pushed out of a store unfairly. One mother whose mixed children were treated badly at a hotel. They all wrote letters back. Each one said the same thing. "Because of Amara, we found our voice." Zara, the woman who filmed the flight, was honored by a national group for her bravery. She gave her award to Amara. "She's the reason I hit record," she said. "She's the one who mattered most." Finally, after many weeks, Mr. Jordan and Amara packed their bags again. They walked into the airport. People noticed. Some smiled. Some clapped. But Amara didn't look around much. She held her father's hand and walked straight to her gate. As they boarded the plane, the flight crew welcomed them kindly. The captain himself came to greet Amara. "We're honored to fly with you," he said. Amara nodded politely. "Thank you. I'll be sitting by the window." She took her seat. She looked outside. Clouds floated softly in the sky. And this time, no one came to move her. No one questioned her place. No one made her feel small. The plane lifted gently into the sky. Amara looked out of the window, her small hand pressed softly against the glass. Below her, the world grew smaller. Above her, the clouds opened like a path waiting just for her. She had waited a long time for this moment, a moment when she could fly without fear. But this was not just a flight. It was a beginning. Months had passed since the courtroom victory, since the world had learned her name, since her story shook the hearts of millions. But for Amara, life was finally feeling a little normal again. She was still just a little girl. She still loved to draw, still liked bedtime stories, still asked silly questions. But now, There was something different in her eyes. Confidence. After the flight, they arrived in a new city. It wasn't for a vacation. Mr. Jordan had been invited to speak at a national children's rights conference. At first, he didn't want to go. He didn't like the spotlight. But Amara asked him, "Will they listen to you?" He smiled and said, "They will. But only if you come too." The room was full of powerful people, lawyers, teachers, parents, leaders. Everyone turned when Amara entered with her father. She wore a small white dress. Her hair was braided neatly. She held her dad's hand tightly. But when they reached the stage, she let go and stood on her own. Mr. Jordan spoke first. He told their story, the pain, the silence, the fight, but also the victory. Then the crowd waited. Was Amara going to speak? She walked up to the microphone. At first, she was quiet. She looked down. Then she looked at her dad, and then straight into the crowd. Her voice was soft, but strong. "You don't have to be loud to be brave. I was scared on that plane. But now I know I was never wrong to sit where I did. Every child belongs. And I hope no one ever feels small just for being who they are." The room was silent. Then, a standing ovation. After the speech, kids came to meet her. One boy said, "I'm scared to speak at school sometimes." Amara said, "You can start by saying one word." "That's how I started." Another girl whispered, "They said my hair was ugly." Amara gently said, "Your hair is a crown. Never forget that." Back home, Amara's story was now part of school books. Teachers used her journey to teach about fairness and courage. Airlines across the country updated their policies. New posters were placed in airport terminals. Every seat is equal. Every child matters. Zara, the young woman who had filmed it all, kept in touch. She wrote Amara letters. She sent her books. She always ended with the same words. "Your wings were always there. You just needed the sky." One afternoon, Mr. Jordan found Amara sitting alone on the porch. She was drawing again. This time, it was a picture of a girl standing on clouds, wings spread wide. "What's this one called?" he asked. She smiled. "It's called me." Now, Mr. Jordan looked at his daughter, no longer just the girl who had been hurt on a flight, but the one who had helped change the skies. He realized something important. She didn't grow wings because of what happened to her. She had always had them. She just learned how to use them. That night, Amara looked up at the stars. She wasn't afraid anymore. The sky wasn't too big. The world wasn't too loud. She had found her place. And no one, could ever move her again. Years passed. The story of Amara's flight, the injustice, the silence, the courage, became more than just a news headline. It became a lesson. It became a legacy. Amara was older now. She had grown taller, stronger, more sure of herself. But some things hadn't changed. She still loved to draw. She still sat by the window every time she flew. And she still remembered everything. One summer morning, she walked through an airport, not as a child this time, but as a guest speaker. She was now 18. She had been invited to speak at an international youth conference about justice and equality. She wore a simple dress, carried a small notebook, and had her old drawing folded inside it, the one she once called, "Next Time, I Fly Myself." As she walked past the airline counters, something caught her eye. A big poster with her old photo, little Amara, holding her father's hand, looking out the window. Next to it were the words, "This seat belongs to her, and every child after her." In honor of Amara Jordan. She stopped. For a moment, she just stared. People passed by without knowing who she was, but she smiled softly. The sky remembered her. On the stage later that day, Amara told her story again, not with sadness, but with power. "I was 9 when I learned the world could be unfair. But I was also 9 when I learned that silence can echo louder than noise." She paused. If you've ever been made to feel like you didn't belong, I want to tell you something. You were never the problem. You were always the light. The room was quiet. Some wiped their eyes. Some clapped softly. Some just nodded, holding her words close. After her speech, a little girl walked up to her. She had curly hair and big brown eyes. She handed Amara a folded paper. It was a drawing. A plane. Two people sitting together by the window, holding hands. The little girl said, "That's you and me." Amara knelt down and asked, "What's it called?" The girl smiled shyly and whispered, "We can both fly." That night, Amara sat by her hotel window, watching planes take off. She didn't cry. She didn't feel pain. She felt peace. She had turned her pain into purpose, her fear into fire, her silence into a voice that reached the world. And now, she knew. This wasn't just her story. It was every child's story who had ever been told to move, to shrink, to stay quiet. But not anymore.